When you sign up for this job, like, you understand the risk. There's every cop does. Nobody is signing up to get hurt or killed, obviously, and nobody deserves to die. But the first thing that I thought of, like, instantly was just like nobody deserves it, but like not, especially not Jacob.
Officer Jacob Hancher's brothers and sister in blue, they're speaking out just days after he lost his life in the line of duty. How they'll remember the fallen officer and why they say they're proud to have worked alongside him. And along with his co-workers, Hancher's fellow parishioners are also remembering his legacy with a candlelight vigil tonight. Catherine Phillips joins us live in just a moment with how they plan to honor his life and his sacrifice. Today we're hearing from those who worked closest with fallen Myrtle Beach police officer Jacob Hancher. Our Patrick Lloyd sat down with 3 fellow officers who patrolled the Ocean Boulevard area with Hancher. And Patrick joins us with how those officers will remember him.
With each new day, we're learning more and more about who Jacob Hancher was as a person. And today I had the chance to speak with 3 people who knew him probably better than most people did. Mark Bechter, McKaylee Coleman, and Cody Kolb are all officers with MBPD. They patrol the area known to the police department as Waterfront. It's mostly Ocean Boulevard. They say Hancher was known as the guy who constantly had a smile on his face, even in situations most people would be miserable in. They say they respond to interesting calls while patrolling Ocean Boulevard, but they say Jacob handled it better than anyone because of his willingness to hold a conversation with strangers and his kind personality. They were obviously all devastated to hear the news of his passing, but they say the outpouring of support from other law enforcement agencies and the community made them realize they live somewhere where people proudly support the police department, and that's given them a sense of pride amid this tragedy.
All summer I can say, like, I haven't walked outside, like going to the store or anything with like anything police written on me, just because of everything going on. But now, like, us and these officers can walk around with like, yeah, I'm a Myrtle Beach cop. Like, I worked with him. I'm proud of what I do. This summer hasn't really been like a feasible option for a lot of people, just because of that fear. So it kind of opened that door, like, hey, I'm very proud of what I do, and I'm not afraid to show it.
The officers also told me they want to make sure every new officer who comes into Myrtle Beach Police Department knows about Jacob and his life so that his story will live on forever. And while his friends continue to mourn his loss, his friends from his church are doing the same. Catherine Phillips is live in Conway now at the Catholic Church of St. James, where Hancher was a parishioner. Catherine, you spoke with friends of Hancher's ahead of a prayer vigil tonight. What did they have to say about him?
Patrick, I spoke with some of his friends that he met while on a mission trip to Honduras back in 2017. They say that he was outgoing, he loved trying new things, and had a great sense of humor. But they say, above all, he had a servant's heart. Now, Alexander Hernandez is one of Jacob Hancher's best friends. They met on a mission trip when they went with the Catholic Church of St. James, and they just clicked instantly. Hernandez says Jacob loved trying new things, going to concerts together, and wasn't surprised at all when Hancher said he wanted to become a police officer. He says that Hancher just loved helping others. And although his life was cut short, Hernandez says his life would be so different if he had never met Hancher.
Felt like he taught me a lot, just by being a person. I felt like I grew along with him. I mean, you don't find friendships like that. It's very rare to find people that you feel like you're like brothers. And just the thought of not being able to meet him or like not being able to have spent that time with him, I think it'd be a little different, you know? I wouldn't find friends like that.
His youth group leader told me that every Sunday he and his mom will come and enjoy Sunday Mass together here at church. Meredith.
And Catherine, tonight that church is holding a vigil in his honor, so can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, Meredith, the vigil starts at 7:30 tonight. The church tells me that you need to bring your own chair, a candle, and a rosary. They'll also do a private service here on Friday ahead of the public service at the Myrtle Beach Convention Center. Meredith.
And WMBF News will be there. Okay, Catherine Phillips live for us in Conway this afternoon. And just a reminder, McMillan Small Funeral Home in Myrtle Beach tells WMBF News that public viewing is planned for tomorrow afternoon. It'll start at 4 and run until 7 that night at the Myrtle Beach Convention Center. A public funeral service is scheduled Friday at 2 in the afternoon. That will also be held at the Convention Center. We'll be covering both of those services live on air, also online for you. The family will then hold a private funeral service before Officer Hancher is laid to rest in his hometown of Waldorf, Maryland. Make sure you stay tuned for WMBF News at 4:30. Neil Watson spoke with a group Hancher was a part of that focused on fitness, fellowship, and faith. Again, that's coming up on your only local news at 4:30, so make sure you stick it with us.
Well, as expected, sunnier skies returning today and warmer temperatures. Good chunk of the area well into the 80s, sitting at 82 in Conway, middle 80s inland, and feeling a couple degrees warmer than that as the humidity starts to increase. And we'll keep this warm weather going here all the way through the rest of the week and likely through the weekend. And it turns warmer overnight. This will be one of the cooler nights we see here through the next couple of days. Around the 60s around, so another fall-like start to the day. We'll see that big climb of temperatures through mid-morning, already into the 70s, approaching 80 through lunchtime, and then another round of middle 80s through the afternoon, likely well into the 80s here along the Grand Strand. There will be some changes into the weekend. Hurricane Delta expected to make landfall in Louisiana this weekend, and while the core of the storm will stay to our west, we will tap into some of that moisture, increasing our rain chances. Have a look at those changes for your weekend forecast in a few more minutes.
A former lieutenant with the Florence County Sheriff's Office has filed a lawsuit alleging he was fired for political reasons. That lawsuit, filed October 1st, lists interim Sheriff William Billy Barnes as the defendant. Barnes took over the office in April of last year following the arrest of Kenny Boone on charges of embezzlement and misconduct in office. The plaintiff says Barnes supported Chief Deputy Glenn Kirby to take over as sheriff and allegedly met with corporals, sergeants, and lieutenants asking for support for Kirby. The lawsuit claims the plaintiff was confronted because his wife liked a Facebook page supporting the candidacy of TJ Joy for sheriff. The plaintiff also says he was fired a day after Joy won the Republican primary against Kirby. We reached out to the Florence County Sheriff's Office and were told they don't comment on pending litigation. For even more details on this lawsuit, you can find it in this story on WMBFnews.com. The former Minneapolis police officer seen kneeling on George Floyd's neck before he died is now out of prison. Derek Chauvin faces counts of second and third degree murder along with other charges. Hennepin County records show he was released just before noon today after posting a $1 million bond. Back on May 25th, video showed Chauvin kneeling on Floyd's neck for almost 8 minutes. Floyd was handcuffed at the time and could be heard telling officers he couldn't breathe before going limp. 3 other officers are charged with aiding and abetting second-degree murder in this case. The newest coronavirus numbers for South Carolina are in from DHEC, and the agency says Horry County has the highest number of new cases in the state. Of the 556 new confirmed cases today, 86 of those are in Horry County. That's 36 more than Lexington County, which was second with 50 cases. Florence County has 25 new cases, while Georgetown County has 8. The total number of cases since the beginning of this pandemic now sits at more than 148,000. DHEC also says 27 more people have died from COVID-19 in South Carolina. That includes 1 person in Horry, Florence, and Marion counties, 2 deaths in Dillon County. 3,300 people have now lost their lives to the virus in our state. 12.9% of the more than 4,300 results reported today are positive. For a closer look at those numbers, just find this story on the front page of WMBFnews.com. President Trump is back in the Oval Office today amid fears he may further spread COVID through a White House staff already reeling from a series of infections. At the same time, Capitol Hill is sorting out where stimulus negotiations stand after mixed signals from the president. Alice Barr has the latest from Washington.
President Trump out of the camera's eye for the longest stretch since his COVID diagnosis, but busy on Twitter and reportedly eager to get back to work in the Oval Office, despite concerns about how contagious he might still be. Top advisors contradicting each other over whether the president did appear in the Oval yesterday.
The president actually showed up in the Oval Office yesterday.
His chief of staff insisting he did not.
He wanted to go to the Oval yesterday.
Signs of a White House scrambling to stay on message amid its own growing outbreak and show President Trump is firmly in command.
The president continues to work. He's in very good health.
The White House physician saying today the president's vital signs are stable and quoting him as saying, "I feel great." At the same time, confusion on both ends of Pennsylvania Avenue about another coronavirus stimulus package after President Trump abruptly tweeted he was stopping negotiations with Democrats on Capitol Hill until after the election. That sent markets into a tailspin until the president tweeted again that he would support a standalone bill for stimulus checks to struggling Americans. Democrats have long opposed a piecemeal approach to economic recovery.
All he has ever wanted in the negotiation was to send out a check with his name printed on it.
And as the vice presidential candidates prepare to debate tonight in Salt Lake City, a high-stakes debate inside and out of the White House over whether President Trump will be healthy enough to face off against Joe Biden again next week in Miami. In Washington, Alice Barr, NBC News.
3 more NFL players have tested positive for the coronavirus. 2 unidentified players for the Tennessee Titans tested positive in the last 24 hours, while the New England Patriots say Pro Bowl cornerback Stephon Gilmore tested positive for COVID this morning. So far, at least 20 Titans players and staff members and now 3 Patriots have gotten a positive test. The NFL already postponed the Titans game this past weekend against the Pittsburgh Steelers until October 25th. And team facilities remain closed. As a precaution, the Patriots canceled today's practice and will conduct meetings virtually. In just 3 minutes, Robert Whitehurst is back with the latest on Hurricane Delta in his full first alert forecast. Let's look at some of the damage left behind before the storm entered the Gulf. Keep it here.
Now the certified most accurate forecast from First Alert meteorologist Robert Whitehurst.
Just about everybody into the 80s today. We'll see another round of 80s for tomorrow. A pretty nice start to the day, though. One of the cooler mornings we'll see here through the rest of the week, through the weekend. It's not until next week do we start to see another drop in temperature. So 60s around tomorrow morning, but as early as 9 a.m., already into the 70s and a round of 80s through the afternoon. Mostly sunny early on. The clouds slowly increasing, and we'll begin to see the rain chances increase as we get some moisture from the Gulf of Mexico associated with Hurricane Delta. Now, the storm made landfall near Cancun last night, is now reemerging in the Gulf of Mexico. It did weaken a bit as it moved over the Yucatan Peninsula, winds to 100 miles per hour, so still a strong storm, and expected to strengthen now as it moves away from land, likely back into a Category 3 hurricane. It is expected to make a landfall as a major hurricane, possibly just off to the east of Lake Charles, and then slowly weaken as it moves inland. Winds at right around 120 miles per hour at landfall. Obviously big issues for Lake Charles, where a lot of the homes there still tarps on the roof from the damage they saw from Laura. Any sort of winds like this would cause big term issues. Those remain to our west, but with the storm lifting to the north, it's going to bring a lot of southerly winds in here and increase our chance of rain as we head into late this weekend. The clouds start to increase later this week, but by Saturday and Sunday, we start to see the moisture feeding in. Notice all the southerly winds in here through Saturday and Sunday. That kicks up the humidity. Going to be a little muggy as we head through the weekend, but also brings us some rounds of downpours, even a couple storms as we get through Sunday. So bumping up the rain chances a bit for the end of the weekend. There will be a couple showers around on Saturday as well, but as we push into the second part of the weekend, that's where the rain chances increase. Notice the morning time lows here only dropping down to 70 by Sunday. Pretty good indication that the humidity is moving back in. Sticks around for most of the 7-day forecast, but starting to see signs of another cold front that will likely arrive a week from today. So still another 7 days down the road before some cooler weather arrives. Until then, afternoon highs right around 80 all the way into early next week.
Hurricane Delta, before entering the Gulf, made landfall just south of Cancun, Mexico today as a Category 2 storm. That was about 6:30 this morning with estimated wind speeds of around 110 miles an hour. Thousands of people were evacuated yesterday, and so far Mexican officials say there aren't any deaths related to the storm. But you can see some of this devastation left behind by those strong winds. Trees were uprooted, knocked over, even blocking roadways. One storm chaser says the major damage is more inland rather than on the coastline.
There's a lot of funneling too with the buildings right along the barrier, so some swaths of extreme damage that we noticed right along the shoreline, but definitely pockets of extreme damage. I think there's a lot worse damage in the center of Cancun ahead.
Robert will be back at 4:30 with another look at where Delta is right now and where it's expected to make landfall along the United States Gulf Coast. And as always, our First Alert weather team is working around the clock to make sure you have everything you need to know about the tropics this hurricane season. That's why we're bringing you live Tropics Now. That's twice a day, where our certified most accurate weather team will join you on the WMBF News app and all of your favorite streaming devices to bring you the very latest on what's going on out in the Atlantic and the Gulf. Make sure you join Chief Meteorologist Jamie Arnold tonight at 8. In just a few hours, for the only time in this campaign, the candidates for vice president will face off in a debate. The event framed and affected by the COVID-19 outbreak at the White House. Jay Gray reports from outside the debate hall in Salt Lake City.
The stage is set, including these plexiglass shields, which had been an early point of contention between the campaigns. Mike Pence and Kamala Harris will be seated just over 12 feet apart instead of the 7 as initially planned. Another coronavirus protection put in place as the candidates sit down face to face for the first and only time during the campaign. Analysts say for Vice President Pence, the goal is
present the Republican agenda without Donald Trump's personality. So he's going to prosecute that case, try and present the Democrats as being too far left for the middle of the country,
while also pointing out the administration's work over the last 4 years, something Harris, a former prosecutor, is expected to focus on as well.
I'm looking for, rather than Senator Harris fact-checking him every 30 seconds, but holding his feet to the fire for what he is responsible for and what his boss is responsible for.
Here's the format for the evening. There will be no opening or closing statements. Topics will be separated into 9 10-minute discussions, with Vice President Pence getting the first question. A big question for those tuning in.
Everybody in your administration
is will this showdown dissolve into the shout fest of the first presidential debate?
Hopefully, I'm sure it'll be more civil.
Civil and safe. It's what most are hoping to see here tonight. Jay Gray, NBC News, Salt Lake City.
And make sure you stay tuned to WMBF News later this evening to tune in to that debate. Ahead at 6, though, our D.C. Bureau correspondent Alana Austin will join us live with an even more in-depth preview of tonight's vice presidential debate. The Oval Office not the only seat up for election next month. Straight ahead, a closer look at a tight Senate race in North Carolina and the surprise challenges each side is facing. A critical Senate race in North Carolina has now been thrown into chaos. The Republican incumbent, Tom Tillis, has tested positive for the coronavirus and is in quarantine. Meanwhile, Democratic challenger Cal Cunningham is dealing with a surprise of his own. Diane Gallagher explains.
As the world watched the president, sick with coronavirus, go to the hospital in a helicopter. Down in North Carolina, the most expensive Senate race in the country began tumbling into chaos.
My phone's notifications were going off like crazy.
Republican Senator Tom Tillis revealing he too tested positive for COVID-19 just one day after sharing the debate stage with Democrat Cal Cunningham, who, after wishing Tillis well and saying he'd also get tested, dropped a bombshell of his own Friday night, apologizing for sending romantic texts to a woman who is not his wife.
Friday's big news would be big news in any election year. It's unclear how big of an impact it's going to have this year, just because we seem to have big news very regularly.
Tillis says his diagnosis won't stop him from campaigning virtually and working to confirm the president's Supreme Court nominee.
I spoke with the president last night. He gave me a call to check in on me. I'm glad to see that he's doing well, too. We're ready to get back to work.
Considered one of the most vulnerable senators in Washington, Tillis was photographed at a private White House reception for that nominee without a mask, not social distancing. That carelessness didn't seem to affect Republicans CNN met in the Tar Heel state.
I think that it is to be expected statistically that at some point somebody was going to get sick on the campaign.
I don't think this is going to make one bit of difference, especially considering what's going on with the Democratic.
Cunningham has worked to create an uncontroversial image while raking in donations and leading in the polls. But right-wing website nationalfile.com posted screenshots of texts between the married father of 2 and a California public relations strategist. The Iraq War veteran, who has centered his campaign on character, called the woman, quote, historically sexy, writing, would make my day to roll over and kiss you about now. The messages weren't dated, but he referenced being nervous about the next 100 days, suggesting they may have been sent during the campaign.
Certainly, I think the greater risk is for Cunningham and the sexting news in his case. He's been presenting himself as an all-American good guy. This could undercut that image.
In a statement sent to CNN, Cunningham said, "I have hurt my family, disappointed my friends, and am deeply sorry." He has not appeared publicly since he addressed the text on Friday. He asked that his family's privacy be respected, but noted he's not dropping out. And while Republican consultants think that this is the opportunity to sway still undecided voters,
I would not be hitting the fact that he had an affair. It would be about, can you trust Cal Cunningham? And the answer to that is unequivocally no.
Democrats aren't so sure, saying Cunningham's platform is strong. Plus, they cite President Trump and his own scandals in 2016.
People still voted for him. They're making decisions about what's happening in the voters' home, in the people's home, and their ability to live and have the access to health care they need, especially during a time like COVID.
Something voters at a Get Out the Vote event in Charlotte echoed.
I don't think sexting has anything to do with the ability to run anything in office.
See how it did not affect Donald Trump in the election 4 years ago.
Still, in a state that's been voting for more than a month, with nearly 400,000 ballots already accepted, at least one voter told us she is now undecided.
I'm not sure. Too many things happened over the last couple of days.
Sunny skies, warm temperatures today, but changes, including a better chance of some heavier rain into the weekend. The First Alert forecast, it's here at 4:30.
Live, local, late breaking. This is WMBF News at 4:30.
Coming up here at 4:30, straight ahead, memories and stories about Myrtle Beach police officer Jacob Hancher continued to pour in after he lost his life while responding to a call for service. In just a moment, how the fitness group he worked out with is remembering him. Plus, one private school along the Grand Strand is trying something new, private counseling for students inside the school. Kate Merriman explains.
The warm weather continues, but the rain chance is moving back in. That First Alert forecast is coming up.
Thanks for being here. I'm Meredith Heeline. First at 4:30. To many people, Jacob Hancher was a Myrtle Beach police officer and a volunteer firefighter. But for one Grand Strand organization, they are, of course, remembering him as much more. WMBF News reporter Nia Watson spoke with F3 Grand Strand. It's an all-men's fitness group about Hancher's time with them as a member.
Yeah, Officer Jacob Hancher was a member of F3 Grand Strand for 4.5 years. And in that time, members say they grew to know and cherish Hancher as part of their brotherhood. F3 stands for Fitness, Fellowship, and Faith. The organization consists of peer-led workout groups that meet every morning. That's how Matt Harris came to know Hancher. Harris says Hancher joined the group to get into shape for the police academy. He says Hancher was coy, but determined to make his dream of becoming a police officer into reality.
Early mornings he was here, and we were just grateful to get to know him. He was certainly a very fine young man, had goals and aspirations, and was very open about what those goals and aspirations were, and just had a lot of fun, a lot of camaraderie, a lot of brotherhood built in those days.
Now every F3 member has a nickname. Harris says Hancher's was Hightower, named after the character in the movie Police Academy. Reporting in Myrtle Beach, Neil Watson, WMBF News.
Love these stories that just keep pouring in, and we do have another reminder for you. Officer Hancher will be honored in Myrtle Beach during a pair of events in the next couple of days. Tomorrow, McMillan Small Funeral Home in Myrtle Beach will host a public viewing from 4 in the afternoon until 7 in the evening at the Myrtle Beach Convention Center. Then on Friday, a public funeral service will be held from 2 in the afternoon. That's also at the Convention Center, again at 2 Friday afternoon. Officer Hancher will then be laid to rest next week in his hometown of Waldorf, Maryland.
Well, as expected, the clouds have cleared out and the temperatures much warmer. Temperatures well into the 80s this afternoon, well into the middle 80s. Inland right around 80 or so here along the Grand Strand, and just enough humidity around where it feels a couple degrees warmer than that. It is a trend that will continue here through the remainder of the week. The coolest weather we'll see will be tonight. In fact, the mornings will get warmer as we push closer to the weekend, but around the 60s around for tomorrow morning, lower 60s for most of the area. But notice what happens through mid-morning. They quickly climb again, mainly sunny through the first part of the day. Temperatures well into the 80s through the afternoon, with the clouds starting to increase late tomorrow Rain chances slim for now, but as Hurricane Delta approaches Louisiana, we're going to start to tap into some of that moisture, especially into the weekend. I'll hopefully get the rain chances through Saturday and Sunday. That's here in a couple more minutes.
State Superintendent of Education Molly Spearman announced today South Carolina will receive a new grant worth more than $31.5 million over the next 5 years. That money will be used to help expand existing public charter schools and open new ones across the state. In a statement released, Spearman says, quote, "The COVID-19 pandemic has shown us the importance of allowing parents to choose the educational model that's best for their child. Receiving this grant will allow us to continue to strengthen our public education system by providing our existing charter schools with the support they need to grow and thrive, as well as funding to open new charters throughout the state. Ultimately, this grant will help ensure that every parent has high-quality public school options across our state that meet the needs of every child." And one Grand Strand private school is doing something like no other in the area. It's providing a private counseling agency in the school. WMBF News Today reporter Kate Merman joins us from Coastal Leadership Academy, where a counselor says students are already showing interest.
During the time I was here earlier this week, the counselor had students wanting to speak with her. This is a partnership between the school and the Center for Counseling and Wellness. It launched about 3 weeks ago here at CLA. Right now, the focus is observing, talking, and interacting with students, and the counselors have already begun working with a few students. Coastal Leadership Academy is a private charter school with around 180 high school students. The new services include 2 offices inside the school for private counselors, something they say hasn't been done before in Horry County. The counselors will provide on-site counseling for students and staff, as well as a monthly podcast for the students, staff, and even their families. A big goal for not only the counselors but the principal for CLA is working on the stigma around mental health.
I think more than anything, I think this is a national concern, is that vulnerability is a strength, and that the stigma that people associate with needing coaching, as we call it, or therapeutic mentoring, as it's sometimes called, or counseling, and recognizing the value of that is not something to view as a weakness, but rather as a strength. And if we can provide that in a school like ours, that asking for help is a leadership quality.
The counselors will be in the school 2 to 3 days a week for now. In Myrtle Beach, Kate Merriman, WMBF News.
The right man in the right place at the right time. How the CEO of a hospital was able to save a man's life and change both their lives along the way. We have that story in just 3 minutes. Trending right now, one man in Phoenix might want to buy a lottery ticket. That's because a stranger was in the right place at the right time to help save his life. Denise Roche shares this incredible story.
Hey, Dad. Wow, you look great.
It's discharge day for 71-year-old Pablo Burnaby, reuniting with family after 14 days at UMC.
I feel great.
Recovering from open heart surgery and heading home with an incredible story to tell.
So the timing was just, I think I'm okay. I don't feel crazy yet. So I think I was so lucky.
It was September 23rd at the Golden Nugget. Burnaby was celebrating his 42nd wedding anniversary when he collapsed on the casino floor. As fate would have it, Mason Van Houweling was there too.
We did his pulse, took it 3 times, no pulse, very diaphoretic or sweaty, all the classic symptoms of a full cardiac arrest.
The CEO of UMC starting chest compressions and using the hotel's AED machine to bring Burnaby back.
I saw his right eye, I'll never forget it, slowly open. And just faintly, I go, we got him, we got him.
To be sure, this is not the typical role of a hospital CEO. It's his job to manage the day-to-day operations at a hospital, not perform frontline emergency care. But on that day, Van Houweling's training in CPR paid off, and he says it's a skill we should all learn.
Everybody knows about CPR, you know. The key was to get him back, and then it is our job to sort out why he did this. Everything was put together for me not to go.
Tonight, Burnaby and his family are driving home to Phoenix, but promise they will be back to finish up that anniversary celebration cut short.
He gave me my life back.
And to visit the man who they say made it all possible.
for me, it's the most meaningful thing that's ever happened in my life, the biggest impact of my life, and it's changed me forever.
Replacing the sunny skies this evening with more clouds, better chance of some heavier rain into the weekend. First alert forecast is coming up.
One nurse in New York became certified for emergency foster care 2 years ago so she could help care for one of her longtime patients. Now he's become a permanent part of her family. Dan Brazil shares this story.
With nearly 2 grown children, Kelly Daybeck says there was plenty of room in her heart and in her home for 9-year-old Josiah.
We knew what we had to do. My whole family, we knew that's what we wanted to do.
It was on September 1st this year when Kelly officially adopted the little boy with special needs. But she'd been his nurse practically since he was born, so she knew exactly what she was getting into.
He was born prematurely. He was born at 23 weeks.
Kelly says Josiah spent 4 years in a rehab home after his mother unexpectedly passed away. He then went into the foster care system.
And I became emergency foster care certified, and he came home with me.
That was 2 years ago. Josiah is doing much better today. You can often find him putting on his helmet and taking off on his bike in the Boston Spa neighborhood. He has a long list of illnesses and disorders, from chronic respiratory failure to epilepsy, asthma, and developmental issues. He had a tracheostomy. The tube that you see is to help him breathe, speak, and swallow.
So he goes to a neurologist, he goes to a GI doctor, he goes to an endocrinologist because he also was diagnosed with failure to thrive.
Kelly's 2 girls, who are both in college, chip in whenever possible.
Yeah, I've got schoolwork, I have 2 jobs, so it's like I'm always busy, but every chance I get, like he comes to dinner with me and my friends and he'll just spend time with us. All my friends love him.
Haley is officially an aide helping with Josiah's schoolwork, his regimen of medication every day, and food for his special diet.
When I first started, there was a lot more meds and there was a different amount of food and water.
They admit it hasn't always been easy on the family.
No, but we've gotten used to it within the past 2 years, and it's just gotten easier.
But without him, without his special personality.
So what do you think about your sisters? Huh?
They say their house would never be the same.
You guys are really close.
Yeah. We always have been.
Now the certified most accurate forecast from First Alert meteorologist Robert Whitehurst.
Another sunny, warm forecast for tomorrow with temperatures into the 80s again through the afternoon. The coolest weather we'll see through the weekend, likely tomorrow morning. Around the 60s to start the day, but as I mentioned, nice swing in temperatures as we head through the afternoon. We'll begin to see some more clouds filtering in late in the day, and we'll start to see some of this moisture from Hurricane Delta arrive this weekend, especially into Sunday, where there could be some downpours, even a few storms around. Now, the storm did make landfall near Cancun. It's now re-emerging into the Gulf of Mexico, starting to intensify again. The hurricane hunters are flying through the storm right now, and we're starting to see the pressure drop again, which is a sign that the storm is starting to strengthen. That is the forecast. It is expected to become a Category 3 hurricane once again as it makes its way through the central Gulf of Mexico and then starts to turn to the north, and unfortunately likely making landfall in Louisiana, very close to Lake Charles once again, as we head into Friday as a major hurricane, quickly falling apart from there, but leaving a trail of very heavy rain from Louisiana through Mississippi and up through the mid-Atlantic. Now you'll notice that band of heavy rain remains to our north, but just off to the east of the storm through the Carolinas, the winds turning back out of the south and bringing in a lot of that tropical moisture through the weekend. So it's kind of muggy here through both Saturday and Sunday, and as we make our way through Sunday especially, we're going to start to see those rain chances increase with those downpours and storms around. Otherwise, it is warm. Notice the mornings, though, only dropping down to 70 Sunday. That is a sign that the humidity is increasing. Those rain chances, there's a possibility those go even higher as we get a little closer to Sunday. Here's your 7-day forecast. We'll keep things warm and relatively muggy all the way into early next week. Looking at our next cold front could bring a drop in temperatures that arrives towards the end of next week.
A California woman lost her home in the historic Camp Fire 2 years ago. And to make matters worse, she also lost her cat, who ran away the day she had to evacuate. For 23 months, she was left to wonder what happened to her cat, but not anymore. Jerry Olinen shares the story of how this feline found his way back to his owner's arms.
When the fire came their way, Lindsay Metz had 30 minutes to gather her children, a few important belongings, and all of her pets, except one.
You know, he was right there by the door, and I went to go get him, and, you know, I ran up on him too quick, and he bolted.
The fire destroyed the family's house, and Lindsay thought, more likely than not, her 8-year-old cat, Artemis.
It was devastating.
Lindsay searched and searched.
I went and looked at every single cat picture. I've called on every black cat. I mean, it really got to the point where my family was like, you have to move on.
Finally, on September 18th, nearly 23 months after he went missing, Lindsay Metz saw Artemis, or who she thought was Artemis, on a friend's Facebook page. After checking for a few telltale signs that only its owner would know, Lindsay determined she'd found Artemis.
Oh yeah, a piece of my heart is back where it belonged. You know, I definitely felt like I had a huge hole, you know, from not knowing, not having closure if he was alive or if he was gone.
It seemed Artemis hadn't used the last of his 9 lives and hadn't even strayed but a few miles from their home for the last 23 months.
There you go. Sorry, it's all right.
Lost and found.
In your consumer news, Ruby Tuesday has filed for bankruptcy, but the casual dining chain CEO says this is not a goodbye. The company says today's filing will help them recover from the pandemic and that it plans to permanently close 185 restaurants that were already shut down due to coronavirus guidelines. That would leave 236 restaurants around the country. The privately held chain had already been struggling before the pandemic as well, having closed about 200 other locations over the past few years. As states across the country allow businesses to reopen, owners fear it won't matter if people don't feel safe venturing out. Now researchers at Rice University's Texas Policy Lab think they have a solution. An inspection program run by the government, which would grade businesses on a list of common COVID-19 safety measures, and it could be customized for different industries, from offices to restaurants. The researchers say the infrastructure already exists for cities and states to quickly implement a grading program.
So we see this grading system similar to the grading system for the restaurants.
So you'll know not only that businesses are committed to adhering to safety guidelines, but also how well they're actually doing so. And this will help members of the public make more informed choices regarding how to manage their own infection risk.
The researchers say to start, businesses could volunteer to take part in the inspections to show off how seriously they're taking COVID safety measures. But ultimately, they say if inspections become mandatory, like restaurant surveys by the local health department, doing business will be safer. Research shows that moms are bearing the brunt of the toll taken on by parents during this pandemic when it comes to childcare, work, and even mental health. If you're a parent who's experiencing the stress, Nia Ham has some tips on how to stay sane during these trying times.
It's written down for the day. Instead of seeing her 3 kids off to school, Anna McGowan now spends her mornings helping them log on to class through Zoom.
We make sure that everyone has all of their Zoom links ready to go.
And many parents like McGowan have a lot on their plate, helping their kids transition to remote or hybrid learning, adding computer tech, teacher's aide, and school counselor to their resume, often while juggling day jobs. Even working from home half the time is tough for this school executive assistant.
It means that it's a really long work day, and I'm not able to successfully be either a parent or an employee.
It can lead to what author and parenting expert Susan Groner calls parenting burnout. Her advice? Breathe.
Go take a walk outside for a few minutes, whatever makes you feel good that you can do in a short period of time.
A study from the University of California finds that moms are more likely to be caregivers for kids, cut back on working hours, and feel more anxious and depressed than men or women without kids during the pandemic. McGowan balances out her mommy duties with her 15, 13, and 11-year-olds by running on her treadmill daily. But the stress can take a toll on children attending school remotely as well. She likes the company of her fish and cat Oreo, but 8-year-old Gabrielle Middleton is missing her friends at school.
A little bit sad.
Her mom, Nija, says it's difficult to give Gabby the attention she deserves, even while working remotely from home.
I do suffer from
you know, the mommy guilt part, of course, because I want to be able to be there and give her my best, but sometimes you're so tired.
Groner has a few tips to help moms deal with what she calls mom guilt. Spend individual quality time with your kids during their breaks. Know that they don't need you constantly, and you can take a pause on your personal or professional goals. It's okay not to push yourself to the max.
I want to be very good at lots of things, and right now I feel like I'm not very good at anything.
One other piece of advice from parenting expert Susan Groner is you don't need to go overboard with fancy, elaborate plans when spending time with your kids. It's more about the quality of the time that you spend together.
Good afternoon to you. I'm Eric Weisfeld. Here's a look at just some of the stories we're working on for you for your news at 5 o'clock. Learning more about the man whose life was cut short protecting the city he loved. A close friend of Myrtle Beach police officer Jacob Hansen shares memories of Jacob's life away from the badge. Oh, he loved his Taylor Swift, as evident in that video of Officer Hansen belting out a tune. And you apparently love to hear him. In fact, hundreds of thousands of you have seen that rendition. Now, meet the person who recorded it. We're halfway through the week. How does your weekend look? Your certified, most accurate First Alert forecast when you join Meredith and me for WMBF News at 5 o'clock.